Anybody there? I need help. Who are you?
What does it mean to be a survival game? Is it managing hunger and thirst meters? Is it building yourself up until you're the apex predator? Is it colonizing the world until every inch is under your control? Lately, survival games seem like a lot of this. And I don't think I'm the first to say that the genre has become a bit derivative over the years. Many of these games involve the same cycle of gathering this resource so you can start gathering the rarer resource, and the rarer one after that, creating a grindy loop of dopamine hits, rewarding experience points for mundane things like cutting a tree down. All of that experience piles into an overwhelming skill tree that creates a false sense of progress, where we're just raising stats in menus instead of struggling to survive. Atomfall is a new action survival game by developer Rebellion, the British studio known for the Sniper Elite series. I don't really care for those, they're a bit too repetitive for my tastes, so I went into Atomfall with low expectations. If I told you Atomfall has bad enemy AI, stiff combat, and inconsistent stealth, I'd probably turn you off of it, right? But what if I tell you that despite these flaws, it's an alternate history take on something actually really interesting? That it's a survival twist on games like Fallout, it's gorgeous, and has some of the best player-driven storytelling I've seen in any survival game. Would that pique your interest? Everything started with the game's intro video.
Windscale, the pride of Britain. Nestled in the picturesque Lake District, the state-of-the-art atom plant has transformed this rugged landscape into the envy of its northern neighbors.
A commercial promoting a town built around a nuclear plant. How having the plant nearby is a good thing. We're only given a bit to ponder the absurdity of this before we cut to the future. One where something went down with the plant. Newscasters are clearly lying about the situation being contained, and it's very clear the place is not safe to be around. This situation is inspired by the real-life Windscale disaster, one of the world's worst nuclear accidents, a 3-day fire that spread radiation across Europe, killing potentially hundreds through cancer. Atomfall pretends that the UK trapped that village in a quarantine zone, jumps 5 years ahead, and places you in the middle of it.
Is anybody there? I need help. Who are you? What are you doing in here?
A panicked scientist startles us awake, looking for answers. Our amnesiac character has none, and we can lie or be honest about that. We can even choose to end him. Either way, he'll ramble about the incident and yell that the truth must get out, that we must find the interchange. He hands us his high clearance keycard, and that's about it. I leave him behind and explore the bunker, the scientist's words ruminating in my mind. It's not long before I find my way out, resulting in the first of the game's many Fallout comparisons, the walkout moment. A gorgeous view of a worn-down landscape, the Windscale plant looming over it all. This intro is quick, but leaves a lasting impact. My mind is full of questions, and I admire that the game was able to do that after just 5 minutes. By this point, Atomfall has given me one mission: find the interchange. It's pretty standard for a game to provide you with a starting quest, right? And to top it off, seconds after walking out, a phone booth rings. I answer to an ominous voice that repeats, "Bartering must die." Adding to my confusion is the game's serene vibe. When I said quarantine zone, your mind didn't jump to a lush, sunny, almost paradise, did it? If it weren't for the decrepit buildings and gun-running psychos, I'd forgive you for mistaking this game as a dreamy walk through rural England in the 1960s. To make things even more surreal, I'm drawn to the sound of a pleasant guitar. The friendly player welcomes me to the quarantine zone. He's a bit calmer than the scientist who woke me up, and tells me that the phones have been disconnected for years, which is strange considering what just happened to me. I tell him about my phone experience, scare the shit out of him, and he never talks to me again.
I don't know what you're talking about. And I don't want to hear any more of it. Now, I think you should be on your way. Be better for the both of us.
Looks like I'm finding my own answers. While exploring, it quickly becomes clear that the gameplay loop is similar to a Bethesda game, at least on the surface. You run around taking down enemies, gathering loot, and completing quests. But this is not a Bethesda game, and these are not normal quests. To start, there's no quest marker in this game. There's no mini-map leading me to my objective. There's nothing. I don't even know if the interchange is a hallway or an entire base or what. Though there is a compass which helps you track custom map markers while exploring. I'm naturally uncovering quests, or investigations as they're called in Atomfall, by talking to people or finding notes. For example, after escaping some outlaws by hiding in this train car, I came across a note with orders from a person named Agravane. The orders tell the recipient to head to the coordinates 27 east and 90.6 north in the Casterfall Woods, one of the game's 4 main areas. When I go to track the quest, no quest marker appears. I guess I have to find that location myself. A character needs help finding her lost friend. I learned that he was heading toward a nearby dam, but I don't know where the dam is. I either need to discover it, find someone who knows about it, or find coordinates that detail its location. I forgot about her request entirely, but came across the dam later. I explored it thoroughly, because that's just how I play. Or, at least, I thought I explored it thoroughly. It wasn't until I looked at my investigations tab later that I totally missed finding the guy. The map didn't remind me, the compass didn't remind me. I needed to remember. As I'm telling you this, I realize that keeping track of a ton of quests as you progress through the game may sound a bit exhausting, but Atomfall's map is actually the perfect size for this sort of thing. It's a smaller, contained space made up of only 4 areas, and crossing them takes maybe 5 minutes at a time if you're focused. The game's investigation tracker separates investigations into each area, making them much easier to manage. The game's laissez-faire approach to questing may not have worked on a larger map, but in this contained space, it's excellent. A perfect blend of, say, FromSoft's lack of explanation and Bethesda's over-explanation. While you have a log that keeps track of the names of all the quests and any discoveries you made along the way, you're also unlocking landmarks on your map. Standout locations like a castle or a watermill by simply exploring them. These landmarks may or may not be relevant to your quests. Some launch investigations, others are important later, and some never play a part at all. It really all depends on your playthrough. One note I found describes the nightly routine of a character, of her going to the boathouse and planting flowers in the nearby ruins. I found that boathouse before, and it meant nothing to me on my first playthrough. I went through the entire game without discovering anything related to it. But in my second playthrough, I quickly found this note about her routine. I did find other parts of that investigation in my first playthrough, but not the note about the boathouse, which seems to be a pretty important part. So now I'm combining the knowledge I learned about this investigation from my first playthrough with what I learned in my second playthrough. The knowledge carries over across playthroughs, which is really cool, and it helped me solve the investigation this second time around. This game's lack of direction means you're actually exploring. You come across mysteries organically as investigations guide your curiosity instead of smothering it with excessive explanation. Indiana Jones is another recent game that explores this more open-ended quest design, and if this is where games are heading, I'm actually a pretty big fan. Sure, games like Prey did stuff like this a long time ago, But we're seeing it now replicated in survival games and other genres besides the immersive sim, which is really neat. Why is this data storage full of a gross blue gas? Why is this lady trapping her husband in a room? Why do these voices play in my head when I approach it? Why does this shopkeeper have a secret tunnel to the zone's most dangerous area underneath his shop in an innocent little village? What are you up to, motherfucker? Everyone has something to hide, even you if you want to play it that way. This makes it especially hard to know who to trust. It's kind of like my dog. She acts all sweet and innocent, but no matter what I tell her and what she portrays to me, she has ulterior motives that I'll never quite know about. The mysteries are ever pouring in, which keeps the intrigue going. Many feel like Witcher 3 level side quests, but they all inform the world and are equally important. Every investigation in the game plays out this way. I'm piecing things together, solving mysteries. A post-apocalyptic detective, if you will. It's a lot like why a show such as Severance is so addictive. It pulls your mind in so many ways you can't help but keep going. My first playthrough was fairly exploratory, yet many investigations ended when I helped someone opposed to that initial quest giver, or simply stalled because I couldn't find enough information to guide me to the next step. It's also likely I was just too stupid to follow the next step, but that lends to the game's dynamic approach to quest design. If I couldn't solve one thing, there was another thing to go work on. Investigations transcend area borders as well. I'll find investigations for Skethermore while in Windham Village, meaning that at literally any time, you can suddenly progress an investigation you were previously stuck on. This keeps the lack of direction from being frustrating, as there are so many investigations to turn to that you can always try something else, and chances are you'll find something to help you with that previous one at a later point. They're really the game's standout feature, and they contribute to the feeling of desperation and survival that I knew the genre was missing but didn't know how to quantify. Even more interesting, Atomfall barely differentiates between the side quests and the main quests. I've already mentioned that your main quest is trying to escape the quarantine zone, but you'll need help to do it. Several characters are seeking the same. They all need your help as well. Joyce Tanner needs you to power on the zone's radio towers. Mother Jago needs you to retrieve an item from a creepy cult that also hears those voices. And that voice on the phone, the Overseer, wants you to destroy Oberon. Whatever that means. He just tells me the interchange is the answer. You can progress the story in any way you see fit, building trust with one or more major characters. But you can only escape with one. Eventually, trying to help them all is gonna backfire. This isn't Skyrim where you can join every guild on one character without consequence. I won't spoil it here, but at one point, two characters I was helping crossed paths without my knowledge, and one absolutely destroyed the other. All he did was startle her, or so she says. There was no warning, no quest log notification that this was going to happen, nothing. It created a permanent consequence for my actions and reinforced that this world is dangerous and unforgiving. The game also makes it hard on purpose to focus on one person. Each character has their own agenda, and legitimate reasons for mistrusting the other ones.
Do not trust Captain Sims.
The Overseer somehow always knows where I am and the decisions I've been making, judging them every time I walk by a phone booth. Captain Sims, the leader of the military entity known as the Protocol, wants me to question the imprisoned Dr. Garrow, as she may have answers as to what went down here. Meanwhile, Nora, just a random NPC, claims Garrow can help me find the rare signal redirector. Should I help Garrow escape from the prison, or question her for Sims? 10 minutes later, I was exploring a Protocol bunker and found the damn thing in a chest. To hell with both Sims and Garrow. Now, keep in mind, this is many hours before I found the item in my first playthrough, saving me a ton of time in my second one. In my first playthrough, saving Garrow turned into a wide-scale prison break. So this time around, I found it on my own, and I'm going to do my own thing. Atomfall allows you to play to your personality. Mother Jago claims that the voices can help me escape, and that's much more enticing than Sims, who just wants me to tell on anyone suspicious in the nearby village. Like, no, I'm not going to help the oppressive military force holding down this village. I'm trying to escape reality, not relive it. But you'll sure as hell find me taking an experimental drug that Mother Jago gives me to strengthen the voices in my head. Yet, if I do want all the endings, the game challenges me to go against my morals and typical playstyle in a fun and rewarding way. On another playthrough, I did choose to help Sims, and the praise he gave me for ratting out the same people I previously aided brought with a strange sense of justice. You know what, Sims? There is something odd going on in Winton Village, and I'm a good citizen reporting on it all. But as I said, only one person can help you escape. Everyone tries to dissuade you from helping the others, stating that they're evil for this reason, or should stay trapped here for that reason. They always let you know what they're thinking, but as Dr. Garrow says, you must ultimately trust yourself to know who's right for you. It's all you can really control. Now, this dynamic approach isn't just in the game's questing and storytelling, it's reinforced in every gameplay mechanic. Whereas many survival games emphasize building bases or managing your hunger and thirst meters, those aspects are completely gone here, resulting in a more explorative experience. As you explore, you'll quickly discover the game's limited inventory space. 4 big weapons, like a rifle or a shotgun, and 16 smaller items, like bandages, food, or pistols. Key items and ammo, thankfully, get their own slots. This limited inventory might seem punishing at first, but it's to emphasize that you're not some god-tier character. You're just a regular dude trying to survive, and I find this far more desperate than an encumbrance system where I can carry 12 logs, 10 rocks, and a rocket launcher or some shit. Don't have the inventory space for bandages? Gotta make it by dropping something else. You're constantly juggling items to make room for others, depending on the situation. The Casterfell Woods is full of druids, for example, a group that doesn't use guns, instead opting for bows and melee weapons. They love to swarm, but if you're not built for melee, you're wasting a ton of ammo gunning them down. Typically, you're recovering ammo from enemies as you go along, but with the druids, you have to meet them on their own terms. They don't have ammo for you to recover. You have to use a bow and melee weapons or risk running out of it. Speaking of weapons, guns in Atomfall don't have in-depth stats. Instead, it's just low damage, high accuracy, or high damage, average attack speed. Weapons don't degrade either, but ammo is extremely limited. I might spend 35 rifle bullets taking down a protocol envoy and recover 8 to 10 from their bodies. And you can't craft ammo either. I really appreciate this focus on simply using guns and weapons rather than crafting and upgrading them. It keeps me playing the game instead of worrying about if I'm min-maxing my gear in every minuscule way. There is crafting though, it's just handled a bit differently. It's a lot more streamlined than most of the game's contemporaries. Here you're gathering loads of materials while exploring and finding crafting recipes to use them in. Recipes include anything from Molotov cocktails to small melee weapons or various buffs which you'll need to survive against the game's many environmental dangers. But the scariest part, crafting doesn't pause the game. This always-on system, combined with the game's limited inventory space, creates many desperate situations. I can recall countless times when I was being swarmed by enemies, hiding in cover, and rushing to craft bandages and grenades while praying I don't run out of ammo before they run out of guards, or getting ambushed from behind while crafting a Molotov cocktail to take down a group of enemies. Interior areas like bunkers don't have maps either, which contribute to the chaos because you're gonna get lost. And being lost while struggling to find a safe space to craft any healing items is agonizingly scary, and once again leads to the desperate survival experience I've been looking for. After that prison break I mentioned earlier, I was trying to escape the surrounding protocol base through a particular doorway, but there were dozens of soldiers and giant robots in the way. So I'm holed up in this building trying to scavenge ammo and crafting materials to create bandages, slowly inching my way through the area. I'm baiting enemies into the room, quickly scavenging their bodies for something useful before the next one arrives. And I swear, every time I make it a little closer to that doorway, another enemy comes out of somewhere, does some damage to me, and makes me use my last bandage. I sprinted from building to building, grabbing toilet paper and other scraps to try and keep my bandage supply going. Finally, after taking down every human, 2 giant robots stood in my way. I had to bait them away from the entrance, sprint around them while avoiding their miniguns, and rush inside to make my escape. The entire process took about an hour, and of course, once I got inside, there were more enemies to fight. The game just does not give you a break. Moments like these are when Atomfall shines. Dynamic investigations lead to tense action sequences. I didn't have to free Dr. Garrow. I could have just talked to her and walked away. The game's systems ensure you never know what's going to happen next, and you have to prepare on the fly. If that's not survival, I don't know what is. Something to note though, the intelligence in artificial intelligence here is almost non-existent. Enemies will either charge you head-on, making for a really easy shot, or stay way back, firing potshots and missing all of them. Their lack of thinking is somewhat of a blessing, because at the same time, you go down in 2 to 3 shots on this game's recommended difficulty, so maybe making them too smart would have made this game impossible. But sometimes the broken clock strikes right. And I should stress that what this AI lacks in smarts, it makes up for in numbers. Taking on that protocol bunker, the one where I found the signal redirector, there were over a dozen enemies in this condensed space. I hid behind these boxes, taking them down one by one with weapons or Molotovs. They never really approached me, they just stood there letting me fire at them. Backup soldiers would be drawn in by their friends' dead bodies, see me, forget I was there, and then leave until I fired off another shot. This is a common occurrence in Atomfall, sadly, but these moments might have you put your guard down, and that's a mistake. At one point, I thought the bunker was empty and was casually looting bodies when another enemy walked in the room and gunned me down almost immediately. See, there's no armor in this game besides temporary defense boosts from a craftable drink or a single skill that upgrades your health a little bit. So as dumb as the enemies were inside that bunker, leaving it was terrifying because I simply missed a couple. And heading outside, a horde of enemies and a robot were waiting for me, either completely by chance or probably because they came across the body of the guard I took down while entering the bunker. This made me scream, and I sprinted away, barely surviving. So, as dumb as they are, the AI's numbers and damage output ensure you are rarely comfortable in this game. You are never overpowered. You are never the ultimate badass. Sure, there are moments when you walk into a bunker, throw a Molotov, gun down a few guys, and completely clear it in less than a minute, but they're few and far between, and this works wonders to evoke a sense of desperation that all survival games should have. Also, the combat doesn't feel super great, at least not to begin with. Melee is awkward and hardly recommended, while guns feel stiff and inaccurate. You can rectify this to a degree through the game's weapon crafting system though, assuming you find the skill for it. See, crafting weapons makes the combat significantly better, not just marginally. You start with rusty weapons that are inaccurate and low damage, occasionally coming across stock versions that are a bit better. But if you unlock the weapon upgrading skill, you can combine 2 of the same type of rusty weapon or 2 of the same type of stock weapon to make one that deals more damage and with more accuracy. 2 rusty weapons make a stock one, and 2 stock ones make a pristine weapon. While still a bit stiff, pristine guns make the game feel a lot closer to a competent first-person shooter and are worth the effort. Once you acquire pristine weapons, you'll have better guns than anyone else in the game. This is because you can't actually find them, they have to be crafted. But again, this is balanced by the fact that you can't craft ammo, and that enemies come to you by the dozens. So even if you have the most powerful weapons in the land, you have to limit your use. You're still alone against giant groups of enemies, and it's a great balance overall. It keeps you feeling desperate for survival, even at the top of the food chain. So sure, the game's combat isn't as polished as Souls or Armored Core, and the AI really isn't that great. But you know what? The game's simplified weapon stats, lack of armor management, and streamlined crafting system are actually really refreshing. There's really no min-maxing in this game like there is in a lot of its contemporaries, and it made me realize how much time I'm spending in menus in a lot of these other games. In Atomfall, the majority of my time is spent in-game, not micromanaging my gear. I gotta say, that channels more survival to me than managing a hunger or a thirst meter and cooking food and building a base. While I do like those things in a lot of games, you gotta admit it's getting a bit old nowadays. In Atomfall, all of the threats are in-world rather than in the menus, and there's no avoiding them. This game doesn't have fast travel, meaning you're constantly running back and forth throughout the areas, noting down spots to come back to when you're stronger or have more key equipment. You're learning the map, and as you keep playing, you start to figure out how a couple of the endings are going to play out. You'll notice key points in the story where things are going to fork one way instead of the other. And at this point, I ended up making multiple save points and writing them down, figuring out how to optimize my playthrough to see as many endings as possible in the shortest amount of time. And the lack of fast travel means that you're spending resources and constantly having to engage with the gameplay loop to find more. There's really no such thing as hoarding resources. You're gonna be using them, so you're gonna have to keep scavenging. Even the skill tree is a survival minigame. No skills are guaranteed. Instead, you have to scavenge for skill books to unlock sets of abilities. For example, the Stealth skill book unlocks the ability to purchase quieter footsteps or silent takedowns. But the thing is, you can go the entire game without finding that Stealth skill book, or finding any of them for that matter, meaning you'll never get to level up your stealth. I've played through the game twice now, and there are some skill sets I've never even seen. Even the game's abilities aren't guaranteed. Even better is I don't need to unlock previous skills to access the ones above them, allowing for complete control over my character. I didn't want the disarm traps skill, as I found it easy to avoid them, but thankfully it's not a prerequisite to any other skill in the game. I can safely ignore it and it doesn't lock me out of anything. Also, not only do you have to find skills, but you have to find skill points to unlock them. Despite the RPGs this game replicates, Atomfall is an action survival game. There's no leveling system here, no experience points given by simply cutting down a tree or headshotting an enemy. You're scavenging for resources, you're scavenging for quests, you're scavenging for skill points. You're constantly on the hunt. It just feels right in a survival game to have to scrape by with what you've been able to find and have nothing handed to you. You can go through this entire game without a single skill book and without ever picking up a single skill point. None of them are fundamental, but they all make your life way easier, like lowering weapon sway or speeding up your body surge speed, so it's in your best interest to try and find them. So despite there being no experience doled out to you for every little action, you'll still want to engage in combat or side investigations to find more resources, to find more skill points, and to better your character to make your survival experience easier. Everything incentivizes scouring around to find a leg up. It's true survival, and it doesn't hurt that most of the investigations are actually pretty interesting. Even the bartering system lends itself to survival. Shortly after the short-tempered guitar man, you'll come across your first merchant. Or, at least I did. You may never meet this person. The game's got a neat trade system where you can select an item that you want from the vendor and give them enough of your items that are equivalent to its value. Each trader values items in a different way. One merchant might love bandages, and they'll weigh more towards your item of choice. But another might hate bandages, making the healing item essentially useless when trading with that merchant. You can sell anything and buy just as much. Ammo, skill points, crafting recipes, keys to areas, but you have to have it in your limited 16-slot inventory. Trades can only happen in the moment. No, you can't defeat a bunch of enemies, hoard all their weapons, and trade them away. You can only trade the 4 that you're holding, and chances are you're using those. It's a really neat system that forces you to think about every trade you make. Also, bartering is yet another way to learn more about Atomfall's world, as shopkeepers will give you a bit of info after each successful trade. Here's where everything comes together to create a unique survival experience. In my playthrough, the first trader had the stealth skillbook, which I desperately needed, but nothing I was willing to give up was worthy enough for this vendor. I learned that this vendor loves Molotov cocktails via this little green arrow. While exploring in a nearby bunker, I found the Molotov cocktail crafting recipe and ended up crafting a few to raise my value just enough to earn the skillbook. After our trade, she informed me of a massive door nearby that seemingly no one can open, and marks it on my map. You know what she calls it? The interchange. And see, you're probably going to come across the interchange differently. I always could have come across the door, or heard more about it from a note that I found, or from someone else entirely, but this is how my story played out. The game rewarded my exploration with a crafting recipe, new skills, and a story beat. But if you're not into crafting and trading, there are around a dozen other ways you could have come across this information, and that's super cool. There's an emerging formula in games recently when it comes to doling out content in a dynamic way, and Atomfall is leading that research. The shopkeeper example I just used, it's not always going to happen. Vendor inventories constantly refresh, so if she didn't have the stealth skillbook, I may not have traded for anything and I wouldn't have learned about the interchange. The possibilities feel endless, really, which goes a long way if you try to achieve all the game's endings. Atomfall does have a few rough edges, though. Sticking with the theme of struggle and desperation, swarms are intended to make your life harder by sending hordes of little enemies at you. These swarms are just kind of annoying. They barely do any damage, but they prevent you from picking up items, so I guess they serve their purpose as they do make exploring harder, but my problem is that eliminating them is kind of annoying rather than a fun challenge. I'm just spamming F a ton of times to kick them until they all go away. The game does give you a swarm wiping grenade later on, but it doesn't really do that much. Also, the people you're helping can be a bit goofy. After breaking Garrow out of the prison and massacring the protocol base, I was able to convince Sims that I didn't do it, and kept him on my good side, just giving him the information that Garrow told me before I released her. It felt a bit too easy to convince him of this, and took me out of the experience a little bit. Also, a couple of the ways that the game cuts off storylines may frustrate some players. Like, Wyndham Village is a safe area. You can go around and talk to people without worrying about getting into a fight. But there is a small protocol base within the village. If you walk in there, you're considered trespassing. I got caught and fought off the protocol horde, like I have in many other regions, without consequence. What I didn't realize is this closes off Wyndham Village. Everyone here is now scared of me, I can't talk to anyone, cutting off any of the investigations I wanted to finish there. I do think it's cool that this happened, and the game gives me consequences for my actions, and it also helps that the game isn't very long if you don't want it to be, so I could focus on this section in my next playthrough. In fact, you can beat the game in under 5 hours, there's an achievement for it. But I can see situations like that pissing off more impatient players, and I wouldn't really blame them. There's also no crime system. Like, there's no punishment for stealing this shopkeeper's key from right under his nose. I didn't have to stealth to grab this. It's literally allowed for me to take it, which takes away from the desperation side that the game does such a good job of portraying. Why am I allowed to scrounge for resources in a space where everyone is struggling? No one should be allowing me to just take things. There is a trespassing system where people will attack you if they catch you standing in a spot you're not supposed to be in, but this is almost always in areas where enemies would attack you anyways, so it's a bit of a half-assed system. All this said, these negatives aren't even that bad. They're just design choices that may or may not work for you, rather than universal problems like irrefutable performance issues or poor system balancing. The game doesn't need a crime mechanic, it just feels weird that I can take a key from this guy without him even noticing. It's just something that feels like it needed a little bit more thought. Much like Oblivion, the bad enemy AI can be fun over frustrating. It's satisfying to chuck a grenade at a group of enemies who just stare at it until it explodes, rather than run away. It's a weird feeling because it's not that Atomfall is particularly groundbreaking, it's more that the game is a specific combination of these pre-established mechanics that combine into something special. We've seen open exploration and player-driven storytelling. We've experienced survival and desperation. It's just nice to see this stuff with a new twist. From the exploration to its walkout moment, the Fallout comparisons aren't unearned, but Atomfall's focus on survival mechanics over RPG mechanics was an excellent choice. It's a survival game that strikes the perfect balance between hardcore and accessible, and something that other games in the genre can learn from. And being gorgeous with excellent performance is a nice benefit. Having it all here in a concise package instead of a long adventure works as well. Your average playthrough will probably be around 12 hours depending on how completionist you are, but it doesn't need to be. It can demand 5, 15, 25, or even 50 hours if you let it. It's really up to you. The game's biggest strength is weaving multiple mysteries into explorative gameplay. You'll simply come across this stuff without even trying. It's the writing equivalent to Elden Ring's location discovery, and yes, I'm aware of the weight of that comparison. There's next to no fat. Everything here serves the greater vision, even its weaker moments. At the end of the day, the nice graphics and performance are great, but what's truly next-gen for me are mechanics that will evolve like this. I'm so addicted to it. And the best part, even after watching this video, you'll still find a wholly unique experience if you play the game yourself. I'm purposely not talking about a lot of different stuff so that you can go in and enjoy the game in your own way. Ironically, this game's walkout moment makes me look at Fallout 3 a little differently. That game's intro is hours long. teaching you about its mechanics in a protected space before all hell breaks loose. Sure, you can always go do whatever you want after leaving the vault, but that game spent a few hours building a relationship with your dad, Liam Neeson no less, to the point that when he leaves the vault, I'm inclined to go find him rather than roam. Atomfall instills the opposite, and while it's a different genre of game entirely, the comparison is begging to be made. Just different strokes for different folks and all that. Atomfall is super dynamic, and as someone who's been playing games for almost 30 years now, I'm realizing this is kind of what I'm looking for nowadays. A player-driven experience that challenges me in new ways. It forces me to think for myself and survive on my own. Every mechanic is meaningful, nothing feels like filler. And it's even got secrets behind waterfalls. I would adore a sequel. A game with more varied environments, maybe a day-night cycle, or even seasons. It's a bit funny that the entire quarantine zone is always basking in the daylight, but this also adds to its surreal nature. That all of this is almost a dream. If this is where games are going, I'm excited for the future. And as for the interchange, well, I'll leave that for you to uncover. Thanks for indulging me.